And of course, I know you, Leslie.
Yes. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank
Let's see.
you.
I'm going to hit
Good
the
to be here.
record button.
Okay.
Boom. All right. So we are live on YouTube. I'm Leslie Elliott Boyce, and I'm here as usual with Deborah Knox and Jennifer Friend. And today we have Sefein Wolk joining us. Somebody was asking in one of our previous conversations how we say walk. Walk. Is it Wolk?
Oh, Wolk, like you'd say
Wolk?
Polk. Wolk.
Wolk. Okay. Or if it was like talk, like walk talk. Yeah.
Yes, there you
So
go.
Wolk.
That's it.
Okay.
Uh-huh. The
Okay.
L is pronounced
Okay. Good. Well,
rather
that's
than
nice.
silent. Yes. But thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, happy Memorial Day, everybody.
Yes.
And
And to you too.
thanks. I know that means a lot of things to a lot of people. It's a very meaningful day for some. So, and for some people it's a day off. And for some people it's just another day. So, I hope that you're all having good weather where you are.
A little better.
Or is it?
Some
I was just
gloomy.
talking to my dad yesterday in San Antonio, and he said it's been in the hundreds with heat indexes in the one teens. Like
Oh
it was like
Oh
one
my
my.
God.
heat index of 112 there yesterday.
Oh my
And
gosh.
meanwhile, we were here 55 degrees with our jackets on.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it's been like in
Yeah.
California too.
Well, Deborah, do you want to give us an intro to Solid Ground real quick?
Excuse me. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and/or COVID mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join one of our groups for only $5 a month. To find out how to join our community, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note that Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And yes, please join us. We love our community, and you are all welcome. Hi, Ninja Kitty and some Navy guy. Hello, Maureen Killeran. Hi. Nice to see you guys here. And so, Christine, we were talking about what we wanted to discuss today, and you had some thoughts about polarization and extremism. And would you kind of go into what you were musing on?
Yeah, so I was having my regular meeting with my critical therapy antidote group, and it sort of came up this idea that there's been so much pendulum swinging to the left, and so much radicalism to the left, and so much just absurdity overall to the left that we're almost seeing on the opposite side where the extremism is sort of starting to happen. And how are we going to get back to, the radical center, if you will, where, we still do have liberal viewpoints and we still do support classic liberalism, but with some discretion and some boundaries attached to that. And what do those boundaries look like and what do they mean? So something that came up was, you know, giving trans people the space to be trans, to dress how they want to dress. And then the other kind of viewpoint at the other end of that, pendulum there was, yes, but when we do that, that's what caused this problem to begin with, is that society started saying it was okay. And society has started to give permission to people with the loudest voices. And because of that, we've found ourselves in a very precarious situation. So I thought it was interesting because I think I've said this before. I found myself becoming a little bit more conservative in my values, and that was never the case, but it was sort of a response to what all of these ideologies are doing, what they're practicing. So that was something I thought was interesting because I hadn't thought so much about how my own viewpoints as of today have changed and become more conservative. So I thought that was an interesting dialogue because we're kind of not paying attention to what's happening too much on the right, where it's none of this exists, eradicate all of it, just intolerance overall. And so it's sort of an extreme answer to this other side that we can't understand, we can't grasp fully. It's just too widespread and big of an issue. So I thought that would be interesting as something to maybe chat about a little bit, like what does that even mean, to be accepting and tolerant.
Uh-oh, your audio popped out, Christine. Can you hear us, Christine? Uh-oh. Your audio is out. Yeah, it's out. You probably can't hear us either. It's your AirPods. Okay, well, so Christine's going to get that figured out. And meanwhile, it's funny, as soon as her audio went out, your dog perked up, Jennifer.
He's trying to compensate. He's like, I'll carry the conversation for now.
Well, it's welcome to live conversation.
Right, exactly. Strange things happen.
Yeah. No, I think what she's talking about is really important. I think it's something that it's very easy to react to something that begs reaction, like all this stuff on the left. And I think a lot of people have found themselves reacting to that. But there is this sense of a pendulum swinging back and forth, and this and the difficulty with finding balance amidst that. So I think that is really important. Do you have any thoughts on that, Deborah?
Well, I was sitting here thinking, oh gosh, I'm not remembering. I didn't know we were going to necessarily talk about this. And I've just read like a whole fat book on polarization and the way out. And now, of course, I'm not remembering any of it. And I'm like, I could have looked at my notes, but I'm not. But I do, we are seeing it on so many different levels. Because like you even look in Europe, for example, and there are a lot more what we would call like far right parties forming that are, gaining steam. And we see things like DeSantis might make some laws, or some of the laws about abortion that are, 6 weeks or whatever, that are like so extreme. On the other end, is it like, is the only way to fight, liberals going off the rails something equally illiberal, or, or is there another way to stop things or slow things down? And obviously so many people are feeling like there aren't, and they just have to go like that. And I do, looking at how some of the left has been when you try to even have a conversation, and there is no conversation to be had because you're a phobe of some sort, I can see why people might go to like, okay, fine, then we're just going to outlaw XYZ like completely, because you just aren't even being a fair, counterparty to have a conversation with.
Yeah, one of the places that I have seen this, and I was kind of, I anticipated this when I was in school and we were hearing the CRT teaching when I was in graduate school, and we're getting this racial theory. I thought, this isn't good. This is going to embolden people who, now we've got it on both sides. So, and it's been interesting to watch that happen, and kind of dreadful. I'm kind of, like the race stuff. You've got people teaching white people to feel guilty, and that you're somehow benefiting, and you're benefiting from racism, and you are a victimizer and an oppressor, and there's really nothing you can do to not be that, because you just are, whether you think you are or not. You're not innocent. You're part of some great white oppression that's happening to everybody who's not white. And so I thought, this isn't, well, first of all, it's nonsensical. But second of all, it's going to create a lot of defensiveness in a lot of people who feel like they're being judged unfairly, and who are hearing this kind of stuff, like the stuff that I heard in school, the stuff that you heard at work, Jennifer. This kind of hyper focus on race is going to create defensiveness in some people. And we see it. You can see it, and it's interesting. There's this on Twitter, I canceled all my images a long time ago. I figured out how to do this. When you're scrolling through Twitter, you can make it so that videos and images don't automatically pop up, and you just get the little URL. So you have to click it yourself if you want to see what they're posting. And that's really helped me, first of all, find that sight much less addictive, but second of all, be shocked by imagery much less, because I have to select what I want to actually view. But there was this whole spate of, it felt very rhetorical. Like, we're going to look at only Black teenagers doing violent things. We're going to just be flooded with imagery of Black teenagers doing bad things, or young Black people doing bad things. And these are real incidents. It's not that they're not real, but it felt very rhetorical, just like the whole police killing only Black people thing was rhetorical. There's an argument being made there, and one side is this pro and one side is the con, or one side is the anti-white and the other side is the anti-Black, or whatever you want to look at it. But there's still this reactive tension in the population, like saying, no, it's not. This is the defensive response from the people who've had to swallow all the anti-white rhetoric, is to hold up the other side behaving badly. And so you end up with like fingers pointing in both directions, and the reasonable people silent while they watch this happen.
There was a video. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you're a little quiet. If you can hold your microphone up
I'll move
up
it
a little
okay.
bit while you do it.
There we go.
Yeah.
I got to figure out this microphone situation anyhow. But yeah, I mean, I used to show a video when I was teaching about a new model of, was it that one? No, I'm sorry. It was another video that I would show about kind of, what was happening in Black communities of color. But I don't like saying that, because it was really about the class system. It was about people that lived in areas where, they were under the middle class, they were working class, or maybe even poverty stricken. And there was always people, I'd always make sure that we focus not just on what was happening in Black communities, but what was happening in communities that are in West Virginia, for example, where those people don't have plumbing or running water. They're still using septic tanks. My sister worked there for 3 or 4 years. And so I traveled a lot out to see her and her family. And I saw a lot of poverty that I hadn't even seen in Watts and Southeast LA, and some of the places that are considered the most dangerous, even up north, by the way, as well. So there may not have been as much crime, but there was a lack of resources. And that was even greater than what we have here. Because in California, in LA, USD, if you're a student there, you don't have access to a computer to do your homework, or you need extra tutoring. All of this is provided for free. You go to West Virginia, where those kids are like, hey, can't come to school today because I've got to do farm work. And that's literally what they're doing, because that's how they're surviving. And not with fancy farm equipment, but literally, we've got to milk the cow kind of thing. We've got to empty the septic tank. Those are reasons that they didn't go to school. And they didn't have any other resources or help. Nobody was out there saying, okay, well, let's get you plumbing, and let's get you, electricity that works, and let's get you, a nice little computer or iPad or something to take home and do the homework. They just didn't go, and they just didn't graduate. And so that to me was a really big kind of oversight when we were talking about all of these issues around race, is that class has a lot to do with where people are going, where they're at now, and how hard it is to get out of that or to move forward. Because it's not the most important thing in the world to be in history class when, your septic tank is overflowing. That's just not going to be your priority. So that was something I think I struggled with a lot when I was still teaching, is getting these students to understand that the only people in the world that are Blacks are not the people in the world that are poor, that are all poor, or the only ones who are poor, or anybody of color for that matter. There were also people in positions of no power that are white. What happens to them? Well, the answer that I would get from the students would be, yes, but they're still white, so they still have an advantage. That was the answer, which I thought was just absolutely hideous. I was horrified to hear that. Because no, they're not even finishing high school. So how can we say that they're going to get access to the same resources, or that it's better for them because of the fact that they have lighter skin? So I might have went off there on a tangent, but that was just some of the experiences I had teaching and what people were seeming to miss
when we would talk about these kinds of topics.
You know, it makes me wonder about, and I don't know if there is any way to do it, like, you know, how to have incentives for nuance. Like, no one's going to get like rewards card for, I was nuanced today, or your taxes. You get like discount on your taxes if you're nuanced. I don't know. I mean, again, like there's more wanting to be in your team and like signal to your team, see, I hate those others. So that's like, unfortunately, where the incentives are. And I don't know what would make it cool or something
Yeah.
to care to have a dialogue. I mean, I think there's some bits of like debate, and I'm seeing with Braver Angels trying to bring these debates out.
Yes.
And, what do you call it? The free press, and then maybe get young people like, oh, I'm going to go to a debate. But that's going to be probably slow going.
I even wonder if debate is the right thing. I mean, maybe debate is part of the problem. Like,
Right.
when I was, I guess I studied rhetoric in undergrad, and I thought it was probably my favorite class I took was some honors course on rhetoric. And it was really interesting. It really helped me to improve my writing and to craft an argument. But it's kind of interesting how much effort we spend on persuading other people, on trying to talk to other people. And then in law school, there's a thing that we would do is to take a side. You'd have to take a side, take a position, because you're advocating for one position or the other. And it's all about the conflict and an argumentation, but it's sides. It's one side or another. And with debate culture, it's still you're taking sides. But when you said that, couldn't there be some way we incentivize nuance? And nuance really, it was very interesting. I had this conversation with Dr. Mario Burns on this channel a couple of weeks ago, and I posted it. And he's got this theory called race meta theory, and he argues that race is not a biological reality. And when you look at his argument, I think it's pretty compelling, because he's talking about how arbitrary a lot of it is. Like, you don't know the racial background of any individual just by looking at them. Somebody could look just like a total white person, total black person, your stereotypical, and you don't know if their grandpa was the opposite, and they're phenotypically showing more of one dominant characteristic than the other. So there's all these ways that we're lumped into groups. Plus, if you're a white person, where in the world did you come from? Where are your people from? Could be lots of different places. So what does it mean to be white? And then same with black. You could be from all kinds of different areas of the world, and then just look like what in America we would just call a black person. And so there's something really arbitrary about these classifications, and yet we want to lump people into these big, broad categories and not look for that nuance. It's like the argumentation around reparations, for instance. Like, how would you even do that? How would you even sort that out? How do you handle a person who's in their lineage both has slave owners and slaves? How do you handle that? Are they paying reparations to themselves? And so, yeah, nuance, I think, is desperately needed.
I think that's very hard for people in general to think in a nuanced way, because it's not black and white. And I think as humans, we tend to want very clear black and white answers, questions, expectations. We want to be able to predict our own future by having a destiny. And if I do this, this is what's going to happen. I think people are uncomfortable with the amount of uncertainty that nuance can be. And I think that's a struggle, the unknown.
And I do think like people want, I'll just say there's like a member of my family that I'm always like, well, I understand this and that. And they go, well, at some point you have to take a position. And I was like, I don't know if I do. Like, there's so many things these days that I'm like, I don't even know if I want to weigh in on, like, I feel like there could be so much I should need to know before I could really grasp the whole thing. And I don't know if that's because there's this wanting the loyalty or the tribal, like, are you in my thing or are you not in my thing? And I need to know which one you're in terms of how I'm going to relate to you.
Yeah. The Clue channel sends a super chat and says, happy Monday, ladies. Thank you very much, Clue. And let's see, Ninja Kitty says, and this is in response to reactive polarization, I think. This is often caused by the holding back and then overreacting to a given premise. We hold our tongues and take it for only so long and then burst at the seams.
I think that's very natural to experience that. I was just talking to my husband about that yesterday. But I'm like, I let these things go, and then all of a sudden, anyhow. So I think that's something that people struggle with also.
Yeah, it's relatable for sure.
Yeah.
Rib Rascal says, I was going to go running, but there's this interesting stream and a thunderstorm. Well, I hope you get to go running later.
It's about to storm here too.
Yeah, same.
It's looking ominous. Yeah.
Oh, it must be on the East Coast. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like thunderstorms. Marie Picard says, being in the debate club allows young people to understand sides that they don't agree with. It has value if done right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say even with at least the Braver Angels format, it's not about anybody winning. It's actually about let's surface as many potential perspectives on this as possible and together try to arrive at a better understanding of something. So there isn't a winner or anything like that, even though they call it a debate.
So increased understanding is the goal then. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what we need right now. I have a great deal of respect for debate because I think it really helps people to learn how to formulate arguments and how to think things through critically and to be very specific and persuasive in the points they're making. So I think it's a very useful skill to have. But right now, is it what we need? Probably not. Probably we need more understanding.
When I think about debate, I feel like to have a successful one, you have to understand the other side too, and where they're coming from in order to have a successful debate. Even if you're choosing a side or you're choosing to take a position, if you don't understand how the other group thinks, then when those things come to the surface or you're having these conversations, you're not going to have your rebuttals ready. So I mean, I think authentic debates that are based on education, nuance, and not education meaning college. I'm talking about just being educated on the topic. You have to be able to understand what the other sides are. So I think it's sort of can be built in that debate can provide people with more understanding, even if it's not the position they take. But I don't know if it's the right time for that either. But it was something that just popped in my head when I was thinking about how I would prepare for a debate.
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer on what you said. I also can appreciate things about debate and the debate process. And yet, I guess we're going to have a debate on debates. Let's have a debate about debates.
It's a little ironic.
It's meta. Yeah.
Like, are we trying to work together to solve a problem? And is that the best way to go about it? Are we trying to win an election? Or, like there's different things people are up to.
Right. I feel like I don't feel like the United States ever fully attained equal opportunity. And I know something can be aspirational and you're trying to move towards it, and that's okay. But I think we sort of kicked that to the side and then just brought in all this sort of, critical race theory, and we're just going to restructure society and equity and all this. But we never even got to equal opportunity. And I don't think that these opportunities are as race dependent as what proponents of critical race theory are saying at all, because like you were saying, the geography where one grows up makes a huge difference into what kind of opportunities they encounter. I think it's more geographically based, and then your individual family, their level of income, but also you're impacted by just what that surrounding area is, how economically stable that is, how educated the people around you are. And I mean, there's been studies that prove that. And the experience, okay, I live in Fairfax County. It is one of the most resourced counties in the United States. If you are poor here, there are so many services that you can tap into, and there are services specifically geared to get you to move up in your economic stability. And in some place like West Virginia, that is not the case. Where my sister used to live in Boone, North Carolina, that surrounding area, it no, it doesn't have that. And if you grow up in a family where maybe your parents actually are the ones that first give you the drugs to help you when you're stressed out, and there's only a few jobs around, and one of them's in a, chicken plant or something like that, you don't have a ton of options. And I wish that we would go back to trying to look at that and correct that as much as possible for people. Instead of this focus on race, I think that actually takes us away from solving these problems.
Maureen Killeran says, the problem is a majority rule democracy. There's going to be little room for balance and harmony outside of majority, a society where the balanced center population will rule when in the minority.
I think that's why we're a republic, right? And not a democracy on a technicality, to avoid mob rule. I mean, I don't want to get into too much politics here, but we throw that word around. Technically, it's we're a republic. And that's to give voice to the little person, the little man that isn't being heard, so that mob rule is somewhat under control. I believe that's the case if I learned my history properly.
Right. And the reason for the electoral college, so that the 10 wolves don't get to vote to eat the one sheep.
Yes.
But what we're actually having is a very small minority making all the decisions about a lot of things. So we have like the activist class, and they're the ones that are, changing things within the institutions, and whatnot, whether at the workplace or at school or whatever. So it is like, it's not the majority that's sort of tyrannizing right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. It's the loudest voices right now. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a fundamental vulnerability of democracy or democratic republic that people can be persuaded or pushed around into certain thoughts and certain ways, that social contagions can grip hard, and that trend can push everything towards an extreme. But I don't know if that vulnerability negates the whole process. And that's one of the things that we hear about liberalism a lot. I mean, people are ready to throw liberalism out. And there was just this really great post by James Lindsay that I saw somewhere, and he was talking about the pendulum swing. He describes it as being between communism and fascism, with liberalism as kind of holding that center line. And yet people are, I think that there's this real tendency to do a slippery slope fallacy and say, well, look what liberalism got you. You tolerated this stuff. You let the wolves in. But I don't think that's a reason to throw the whole project out, the whole process out. I think that's just a reason to recalibrate.
And that's what came up during our debate when we were having that conversation, exactly what you're talking about. This is where liberalism got you. So clearly it doesn't work. But that's obviously not where we're trying to go.
It is tricky, though, because I do wonder, and I'm like, am I speaking out where I don't know what I'm talking about? Like, did liberalism seed the ground of some values that would hold a society together, people, would agree on? Because if everything's kind of okay, is there a vacuum, and then that allows something like woke to come in? I don't know the answer to it, because I don't necessarily want to have like some superior value system and then we say we're the better one over everything else. But I also see what maybe happens in the absence of some, whether it's religion or whatever, in the absence of that, in this free marketplace, it does seem like there's not something kind of holding everything together, and things can slip and slide a little bit more. I don't know. It may be like there's no perfect situation, just being aware of what the possible challenges or downsides are and just keeping an eye on it. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think in that there has to be some kind of structure, some kind of model for what's okay or what's moral, without disrupting or disintegrating liberalism, altogether. So I think what you're saying, I mean, I tend to agree with that. That where's that line of how we hold ourselves together as a functioning society and community, and where does it go over the top, or where does it go to be, to be either too accepting and too allowing of everything, or too restrictive and not allowing of anything. I mean,
Yeah.
there's
That's the tension, right? That's the tension. I don't think we can ever get rid of that tension. But I think now some people are starting to think that being, a sort of good liberal means that you aren't permitted to have boundaries and you're not permitted to examine a particular phenomenon and say, hey, I think that's morally wrong. And I think that because I believe that it causes harm. Like that is just this horrible thing to have any judgment about a particular thing. And I don't agree with that. I think not condemning a person themselves is a positive, but I don't I don't take liberal to mean you cannot condemn certain behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it exactly means that you get to choose what you think is where you place your own value for yourself. Like there's freedom of association. There's
That's right.
Liberalism involves making choices for yourself and accepting that other people will be making choices for themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder how much of this is also just a problem of scale. Because when we say we, what do we mean? And when we say society, what do we mean? And it seems to be something different than we would have meant when, 20 years ago, when we didn't have this concept of interconnectedness to the same extent. Like right now, you can just pop onto any of your social media feeds and find out something horrible that happened to someone that you've never heard of in a place you've never been, and you can get really activated about it. Or you can read about somebody's lunch somewhere, or somebody's romance, or somebody's divorce, or somebody's whatever. Or watch that horrible video, Jennifer, that you sent with the RuPaul Drag Race guy. He's in a drag and he's pantomiming having had a double mastectomy, and it's a shocking video, right? Like that in itself could have we could have done a whole hour conversation just on what the heck is that. But it's like, that's not a show I've ever watched. I'm not aware. I hear of that. I know that's a show somewhere, but is that on TV? Is it network? What is that? We're all exposed to like little tiny bits and chunks of all kinds of other things. So it's really hard to even conceptualize what you mean when you say society anymore. And yet we're investing ourselves and our energy and our emotions in things that are happening all over the place that are so fractured. And
yeah,
I wonder about that. Like, what do we even mean when we want to help with society, or we want a better society? We basically are saying, I want to tell other people how to do things the way I think they should be done. And I'm just as guilty of that as anybody else. I think that this is the spirit of the age because of our weird concept of culture right now, due to social media interconnectedness.
Everything is so in our faces, whereas before, people who are this is going to sound awful, people who are into really weird stuff group together and they find their own little place, and the rest of us don't know they're doing it. Now all of a sudden, like your neighbors are like pooping in each other's mouths or something, and you're just happier before you knew it. You had peace and now you don't have peace. I think that we're like, I don't think that our brains were meant to take in the volume of information at the rapid speeds that we are taking in information. And I'm guilty of the, scrolling, which I have learned to limit, but I don't think we have that capacity of, oh my gosh, something happened over here in this country that I've never been to, will never be, never be going to. And this happened and that happened. And I have to be, feel some kind of way about all of it. And I have to have, I've got to have compassion for all of it. And I have to have an opinion about all of it. I just don't think that we're built for that.
Yeah.
When I think about this issue, one of the, I guess, one of the biggest problems that I see in the way that we're all that the, if you want to go sides, the other side maybe, or this other side, or these sides, the people that tend to group together in ideological speech patterns, one of the biggest problems that I'm seeing is this tendency to want to micromanage what other people are doing and convince other people to think a certain way. And so then I reflect on my own behavior, and am I doing that too? Am I also doing that, trying to tell other people how they should think? And kind of I am. I have to admit, yes, I am doing that, and I want to stay away from that. But if I pull back from that, where does it feel inappropriate to do that, and where does it feel appropriate to do that? And the line I come back to is education. Is our education systems being filled with rhetorical ideology? And I would like to see that removed. That is the extent to which I want, and I legitimize to myself my own desire to stop what somebody else is doing or change what somebody else is doing. It's this ideological pressure on our students in this country. It's just like we are all paying into a public school, a government school system, and then we are all expecting that, what high percentage of our young people are going to go on to a university education. So the educational system being captured by rhetorical ideology is the one place where I feel valid in my attempts to play that same role, I guess.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like that shared resource space. It's kind of like if you had a commons of some sort too, right? If you all shared like a yard or something, or a garden even, right? And then some people just started, I don't know, throwing a bunch of nitrogen stuff you didn't want on there, who knows what. They brought goats in. Whatever the case may be.
The tragedy of the commons.
Yeah, like I don't know if I want that going that way. If you want to do something on your yard, fine, whatever. Yeah, so maybe it is a commons kind of thing that's paid into and co-experienced.
Yeah. Miroir Jumeau, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, hope that you'll consider watching the Flamingo Files, and let me know what you make of what she has to say about the nature and history of feminism. Okay. That's interesting.
Was that the Fiamenko woman? What's her name?
Is it Fiamenko? Okay, maybe I read that wrong.
I forget what her first name is. Janice?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's another one that we see a lot of polarization around lately, is feminism, right? There's this real big push to demonize feminism and to say feminism is where all this stuff came from. And I don't know how to suss that out, because I feel like that's another slippery slope fallacy. I feel like there's some elements of feminism that I wouldn't want to see rolled back. But I don't think that the sexual revolution is about feminism. I would divorce those two things. I would say that is a very different cultural phenomenon. But feminism, maybe in its earliest iterations, being just about women being able to own property and take care of themselves and resource themselves without depending on a male benefactor or husband or father or somebody to do that for them. I wouldn't see that rolled back.
Yeah, I think a woman being taken seriously as a fully, like an adult human who can actually think and have agency. Yeah.
Yeah, I would much more equate a lot of what we're seeing with a lot of the sexual revolution, which is more about eugenics, Planned Parenthood, sexual education, the changing of sexual relationships between men and women, the disconnecting of sex from the Judeo-Christian family orientation. So I think what we're seeing that a lot of people want to blame on feminism is more about that, and that's a false equivalency to put that in the boat with feminism. But
interesting. Yeah, I could see that.
And also, I think what goes with the sexual revolution, or it's tied, that being a good feminist is basically that women are like men. like all the aspiration should be, I could do the man's thing, I can do whatever. without actually valuing what women exclusively can do and kind of deriding that or minimizing it.
That's the problem. That's the problem I have with feminism in general, actually, is just exactly what you're pointing out, is that it seems to be focused more on doing things that men do just as well as men do, while neglecting certain things that women can do and only women can do and can do well, like bear children. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot, but I do think that this is why I have a hard time calling myself a feminist now. And I used to be very much so loud and proud. I mean, high school years, college years, right after college, up until recently, when to me, in so many ways, what is feminine, what actually makes us feminine, is erased or is in some way transformed into the masculine. And that to me is where the feminism movement sort of lost me, and I'm not quite there yet. Not to say I don't believe in women's rights, and I mean, that just goes without saying. I believe in all of that, obviously, and vote, the women's rights to vote and own property, be citizens, etc. But the extreme side of that, I think you put it beautifully when you said it's like teaching women how to be men.
Yeah, which implies that, that is what's more valuable all along.
Yes, bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been
really
a feminism.
dislike that.
A feminism. I've never been a feminist. In fact, I've never been interested enough in feminism to really spend time reading about its roots and the origins of all of this. So I understand there's waves and there's whatever, but I've always found it to be very caustic and like this, like the anti-stay-home mom thing and just women have to whatever. So I've always associated with that. And yet I imagine that at some point in the past, we owe feminism a debt of gratitude for pulling women out of a place where they were really second-class citizens. So I don't know. I don't think it has to be all or nothing. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can reject certain elements of it. The sexual revolution also is responsible for pushing women to act more like men in the name of women's liberation. Like, we're all supposed to just enjoy casual hookups, try not to catch feelings. We're not supposed to have any kind of, relationship desire. We're supposed to just want to get laid just like men. And that's liberating for women. So it's the same logic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of curiosity, this is kind of off topic, but
pick up your mic, Christy.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hold on. Here we go. Out of curiosity, and this is kind of off topic, but did anybody watch Sex and the City or follow that particular series on HBO?
The early, not the more recent things, but when it was on originally.
And what did you think of? Oh, okay. What did you all think of it in terms of how they portrayed the sexual revolution and women being able to sleep with whomever and it being, applauded or in some way, definitely not, devalued, but, something cool, something that women should be able to do. What did you all think about that? And in thinking about the conversation we have now, it was a very powerful show in the sense that so many people watched it. So many people chose what character they thought they were like the most and who these women should have ended up with in the end. So I'm just curious about if anybody has thoughts looking back now, watching it, what the messaging was back then.
Well, I liked it at the time, but I was all embedded in that worldview. So, now I'm like, at the time it seemed fun. I had lived in New York, like in my 20s, and so it was like, what a great time they're having. I wish I knew all those people, whatever. I wish I had those friends. So, I mean, now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's the message, to women? I don't think it's really a good one, but I loved it at the time.
Yeah, sure. It was very entertaining.
Yeah. I loved it at the time too. I was in a marriage that I didn't feel very happy about at that time. And so I think emotionally, in some ways, I was still single. And I felt like watching the show, I felt almost like these are my single girlfriends. And I thought that sort of showed the power of female friendship. And I really liked that. And, I also thought that Carrie in particular, she had her sort of wild side, but then ultimately she really wanted love and really wanted to find her person. And I think that that's where a lot of women are. I I always had trouble with the character of Samantha because I felt like she was really cold and calculating um, when it came to sex and her treatment of herself and treatment of men. I could never relate to her in that way. And I don't know how I would look at that show now if I were to watch it. I imagine I'd look at it from a very, through a very different lens. But at the time, I liked it, and I liked that it emphasized that yes, getting married and having kids can be wonderful, and there are also other choices that are valid and wonderful. So, yeah, I think there were some good things about it, and also some things about it that were not healthy for women. Like, oh, you should just be able to sleep with anybody and not feel anything about it.
And that's the thing with Charlotte. I'm actually thinking how she ended up with was it Harry? I mean, she had the picture perfect husband, and then there was Harry, and Harry was her divorcer, and he was just not necessarily like this attractive thing, like she couldn't even believe she fell in love with him, and she even converted. So I kind of like that storyline.
Yeah, I watched it for a little bit, and Carrie was the narrator, so she was just obviously the most balanced and relatable, which isn't to say a lot, but she was. I liked her character. I did like her character mostly. I found her likable. The other ones, I didn't like any of them. I thought Charlotte was a ditz and was really vapid and just not believable. And what was the short-haired girl? The redhead? Miranda. He was my least favorite character. I really didn't like her. I don't remember the character that well, except she just made lots of dumb choices and was kind of snarky and cynical. And then Samantha was just like a clown. She was just kind of comedic. And but I liked Carrie. I didn't watch the show for very long, but
well, they ended up in better places, I must say.
Oh, like they
did develop.
Okay. I thought that they probably devolved. That would have been my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I just asked the question because it was so highly influential with women that were in their 20s and 30s at the time when it came out. It was almost like its own cultural revolution and its own coming out party in a sense for women. And I didn't watch it when I was that young. I watched it. I think I started watching it at the end of my 30s. The show had already been off the air for 20 years. So my opinions or thoughts were already a little bit different than they would have been earlier on. Anyway, so that was just something I was kind of thinking of because it was very powerful and what it did to women's sexual liberation, supposedly.
The Clue channel is mad at me for not liking Samantha. Sorry, Clue. I don't. She was sorry. You can like her though. That's fine. That's fine. Let's see. Rose Hardy, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, if any of you saw Barbie, I felt like the female characters displayed the same traits they hate in men, but it was seen as empowering. I hated it. I watched Barbie. My husband made me watch it. I think we see it twice. We saw it at least once. So we saw it at the theater. And I really didn't like did you see the opening sequence where the girls are all playing with baby dolls? And they're like miming being a mother. They're pushing them in strollers. They're holding them. They're feeding them a bottle. And it's a bunch of little girls playing with baby dolls. It was so blatant because then they are all like in gray and they're gloomy while they do this. It's like the sad thing. And then here comes Barbie, and it's a larger than life, sexed up Barbie doll. It's the real woman, and she's huge, and she's like this, like radiating with music and whatever. And so here she is, and all the little girls turn and look at this sexed up doll, and then they bash their baby dolls' heads in. And they abandon their
Whoa.
prams, they abandon the strollers, they abandon the bottles and the housework and everything else so that they can go idolize this one, like it's Barbie represents like this frozen in time, just a little bit of like adolescent female sexuality frozen in time before it can evolve into motherhood and beyond. And so here it is, the static thing you're supposed to want to be. And I didn't. Yeah, good grief, says Barbie was fun if you didn't take it too seriously. I really struggled to get through that movie. Really did not like it.
And you watched it twice?
No, I was thinking back and I don't think we did. I think we went to Oppenheimer. That's what it was. We went to two
Oh.
movies like in the same weekend. So it was, no, I think one was
Oh,
Barbie
yeah.
and one was Oppenheimer.
Double
Right.
feature.
Yeah.
There
I
you
don't think
go.
I could have sat through it twice.
Yeah.
I didn't go see it kind of on purpose. I don't know. I was like, everyone's watching it, so I'm not going to.
I do the same thing. I like all the popular like guys in school when I was younger. I was not attracted to one bit because everybody liked them. I had to not like them. I think that's why I didn't see it either, because I felt like I didn't want to like it, so I already had that in my mind. But then I also didn't think I was going to appreciate what the message was. I had read a little bit about it, and it didn't seem to be portraying a message of empowerment in a way that I would align with necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do feel like all of this stuff is sort of at the demise of men, which is really not very effective in having a family structure at home or a nuclear family structure at home, which we know families are made up of multiple kinds of pairings of parents, but some of these core roles that the nuclear parents play in a home, it kind of devalues, again, what I said earlier, what the feminine brings into the picture and what the feminine brings into raising kids, things like that.
Yeah, modern life.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Deborah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, kind of to bring this back to our sort of opening topic, I'm just trying to wonder if this thing about feminism and where do we want to kind of go from here? It feels like even though there is some polarization, I do have a sense that there's a lot of women that are kind of like, yeah, you know what? I think I don't want that sexual revolution. Like, I feel like this might be the one topic area, even though it is fraught, that there might be a little more room to have these discussions. I still feel a little nervous about bringing it up, but like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of women that go, wait a minute, I don't like how everything went down or how I treated myself or how I whatever. And so of anything, it might be, again, not that there aren't people that aren't arguing still for this ardent feminist, whatever side, but this might be something where if women just really look at their own experience, they might go, yeah, I don't know if I like how that went.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, and that you might have been going in a different direction, Leslie.
Well, I was just thinking about how modern life is both. I wish we had a word for emasculation, but the women's side, defeminizing.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Like this, it strips a lot of what it takes. Like you look at the action figure, the action actress, right? Action film, the heroine. They're ultra sexually dolled up, so they're ultra sexualized women. Gorgeous girls with super thin bodies but big hips and big boobs, and then they have an ultra masculine personality.
Mm-hmm.
And so every single thing about their personality is basically a badass man who's detached emotionally, and he's a complete slayer and really aggressive. And that's like this trope that you see over and over. It's like the idealized woman of the Marvel universe or whatever, the modern pop culture is ultra feminine looking, ultra masculine acting. Yeah. But then modern life also emasculates men completely, because it puts men into a position of just being like these drone workers who have no agency and no ability to make something better of themselves. And they're, it's disenfranchising both sides. And then what do? They turn on each other. And so it's really kind of like a social structure issue, I think. And I don't know, I guess that could be a whole conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Someone in here, that was a good comment. Brandon Bergian says Barbie movie tells you exactly what it's about in the first 5 minutes. You've got all these little girls getting ready to be mothers, and then Barbie shows up and they all turn into narcissists.
Wow. Wow. Maybe I'll watch it now that it's streaming on Max or one of those streaming networks. Now I'm curious.
Yeah.
See what I think. Yeah.
Well, and then yeah, the hero, somebody says, isn't Ken the hero of the movie or something? And yeah, he is, but he finds himself through like basically looking in the mirror and realizing he's awesome. And so it's like it's about narcissism any direction you go. Yeah. So we
Wow.
started talking about societal chaos and division and
Yes.
polarization, and we end up with Barbie.
Yes. Yes.
Jennifer, what's your brilliant synthesis?
I don't know that I have a brilliant synthesis. I'm just thinking that I think it's really hard for women right now, or at least it is for myself, to just kind of have beingness. Because I feel like whatever we are and whatever we do, we are constantly the subject of interest and fierce debate. Whatever side you fall on in terms of pro choice, pro life, just to have your body constantly talked about with such fury, and laws passed that affect you, it's constant. And then the whole thing about, should you work? Should you stay home? I feel like it's sort of like this shredding that happens publicly. And then the, am I a sex object? Do I actually get to be a human? Can I be both sexual but also a human, and also have some traditions? Just everything feels like women are just being, I don't know, kind of roasted on a spit and then ripped apart publicly constantly. I'm so sick of being the subject of debate and constant fucking opinions, and it never ends throughout your lifespan. It'll never end. The whole time you're female, you're this contested thing. And the Barbie movie to me is sort of part of that. And I'm honestly just sick of it. I just like, can't we all just get on with our lives? It's a bit much, honestly. That's what I'm with right now, anyhow. So,
Well, and how much of that is also a function of the constant exposure to other people's opinions.
That's right.
Because
That's
like
right.
we've talked about this, and I'd really like to focus on this at some point a little bit more. I think it's so interesting how women's own sexual self-perception changes over the lifespan. I think it's really fascinating. So if you took probably even one of us, because we've all expressed that we've had changing opinions about lots of things. And if I were to go, if I'd written diatribes about how I felt about the world and femininity and whatever at every 5 years along my life, and then I go back and look at these at some future point, I'd probably hear a cacophony of arguments. It would just look like lots of different opinions and arguments and be really frustrating. And so when you take that, and that's just one person's lifespan, you take that and you throw it across the whole internet, and you hear all these different people chiming in based on their own disparate experiences and perspectives. And we're exposed to that all the time. It just feels like a tremendous stew of social pressure. And I think we have to renegotiate our relationships with this thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
And just find a way to have your own beingness that doesn't feel so tainted by all of this.
Let's see. Somebody home at last said, I don't know by name any of your guests, so to label your video by guest name doesn't help me decide whether to watch. I'd prefer to see the video named by subject of the discussion. I always do the titles after the live streams because it's live and we're actually going wherever the conversation goes. So if I were to I already have actually thumbnail made for this video based on what I thought we were going to talk about, and I have to go edit it because we just go it always evolves. So if you just tune in for the live stream if you like live, because it just goes where it goes. And if you want to see the subject, wait till after we've recorded, and then I always pop up a subject. So
yeah, we cannot predict.
Right?
it's the joy of live discussion.
Yes, it's the beauty of it.
The Cracker Jack box, you're gonna get the prize, you don't know what it is.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we should rename this whole thing Cracker Jacks.
I like that. I do. I like that.
Cracker Jacks and the scatological neighbors.
Yes.
Oh no. Well, thank you so much, Christine, for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Thank you. Oh, Point Curation, thank you so much for the super chat. And thank you all very, very much for joining us in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, Jennifer and Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Yes.